reason we often get questions about appraisals, right? We can all, not all, but like, you guys know how to list a house, how to present an offer, how to negotiate the terms. And then on the mortgage side, obviously, we know how to qualify for credit. We know how to run the AUS, the pre-approvals, like all that stuff. The appraisal is like in its own world, right? So, you have a transaction going through. It's a $300,000 purchase price. You're looking at some comps in the area, and if you're the listing agent, you're thinking, okay, you know what? I've done my homework. 300 is the price, right? You're the buyer's agent. You're thinking, you know what? They're asking 300. Let me look around, see what's going on. 300 seems pretty fair. Let's submit that offer. Then for some reason, we get the appraisal back, and it appraised at 285. Or on the opposite end of that, it appraised at 315, 320, 330, and you're thinking to yourself, man, did I miss the boat? Should I have pushed it a little further, right? More so the pain point of the 280, 290 appraisal, like, oh man, what's going on here? Why did he use that comp? Why did the appraiser, go outside of the subdivision? Why are they comping it out to a 3-bedroom when this is a 4-bedroom? Why didn't they count the square footage in the basement? There's a bathroom in the basement. Why aren't they using it? All of these questions that, that realtors have that, in the initial onset of like, yes, it's worth 300, right? Because of reasons X, Y, and Z. Why doesn't the appraiser agree with me? All of these questions, hopefully, are about to get answered. So if you know or don't know, I'm on the advisory board for class valuation, right? I don't know what I did to deserve the honor, but they said, you know what, you seem to know what you're talking about. Come join us on the advisory board. So I figured it would be a great idea, a great opportunity to bring in an expert from class valuation. And John, you'll talk a little bit about who class is and what they do and how the AMC works, et cetera. Figure bring in the experts and give us a little appraisal 101 and how it's done and what they look for and don't look for, tips and tricks to get us that value. So with that, I bring in John Dingeman from Class Valuation. John, floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Jason, for the introduction. And so it's very cool that you participate on our advisory board. We actually have two, and one of them is comprised of appraisers as well, our partners. We think it's very important to solicit feedback from our partners, both lenders and appraisers, to ensure that we're being the best partner that we can be in that regard. So my contact information is up here along with my prom picture if you're interested. It does include my email and also my phone number. I'm more than happy to answer any questions that you may have. Looks like we have more people online, Jason, as well. Lauren and Sarah are indicating that there's a bunch of people watching off of one computer. So it looks like our attendance is well over 20. So we thank you for attending. I hope to answer a lot of questions. I'm the chief appraiser at Class Valuation. We are, as Jason pointed out, an appraisal management company. That is a privilege for us when we interact with a client who trusts us to manage the appraisal process for them. And that's exactly what we do. We manage a panel of appraisers. Our panel is quite large. We have about 18,000 that sit on our panel today. And so we engage those appraisers for specific assignments. And because of the resource we have really cool technology like Smart Assign. It knows the best appraiser in that market, not just based on proximity, but how much work they've been doing in that area. And then what are they good at? For example, maybe I'm not really great at manufactured homes, and Smart Assign just wouldn't send me a manufactured home assignment, right? So really good stuff there. And then, of course, our goal is to manage the process through delivery to our lender partners. And then when you have revision requests, help walk an appraiser through that, or at least get them addressed. And that includes the reconsideration of value, which is what I'm going to get into next. A little bit about me, Jason, and team. I am a certified residential appraiser in my home state of Arizona. As of this weekend, what I'm doing is moving. I'm moving to Sacramento. So my home state will change. I am certified there and in 9 other states beyond that. I'm also a registered property tax agent. a continuing education instructor. I've taught classes for appraisers, agents, loan originators, and assessors, all on a variety of different topics. And I'm also the past president of a trade organization for appraisers called the National Association of Appraisers, which primarily represents boots on the ground residential appraisers. So the most common question really revolves around, I think, Jason, you framed it quite well. We have some expectations today, those that are involved in the transaction, of what we think the value of the house might be. And it can be a challenge when the results are very different. Some of those are certainly the appraiser's mistake. And in other times, we just missed the mark. And sometimes it's tough to deal with, since we're counted on as being experts to our clients, the consumer who's looking to either purchase that home or receive a refinance. So let me go ahead and share my screen. And Jason, if you'd be so kind to give me a thumbs up that you see it. Perfect. Thank you so kindly. So let's start with placing a reconsideration value. Then I kind of want to open it up to some questions that you might have, Jason. When I'm done with this, I'll stop sharing my screen and maybe pull up something else just to give everybody a glimpse into the future of appraisals, as I indicate here on my shirt. So there is what we call the gap between homeowner perception of value and appraisal. This is common. We see an article like this at least once a year online in the trade publications, either for mortgage or home lending. And there is a gap between what a homeowner believes their home is worth and the value of the property itself as it comes back from the appraiser. And sometimes this looks a little bit better when we're looking at it in a graph. We can see that 20% gap. And there's a reason for this. The homeowner or somebody involved in the transaction, they are dependent, partial, and subjective. And by God's, they should be. If it's my house, I certainly have my own perception of my house. I think it's better than anybody else thinks it is. I think it's worth more than anybody else thinks it is. And if I hired you to list the house, I want you to sell it for as much as you can. And if you're doing the mortgage for me, I'm checking Zillow as often as I can. And when it reaches a peak, that's when I want you to do my refinance, right? And by the way, I want you guys to make sure that I get that, right? It's dependent, partial, and subjective. These are three terms, the complete opposite in which the appraiser serves their role. The appraiser is supposed to be independent, impartial, and objective. They are really in the transaction the only disinterested party to the mortgage transaction as a whole, right? So again, just understand there's two different roles we play, and certainly the homeowner and those involved may have different feelings about the value of the home. So what does contribute to value? There's a variety of different acronyms that people use. I use DUST: demand, utility, supply, and transferability. Supply and demand is very obvious, right? Does somebody want it? And is there enough inventory? In recent history, we've had a shortage of inventory, which is increased demand, which is added to value. Well, utility, what benefits the user of the property, right? If I have a family of 3 or 4, a 2-bedroom home is not going to work for me. And so that utility doesn't serve a purpose, right? And then transferability, can I actually sell the property, right? Do I have the ability to do that? For example, I have a friend who owns an Airbnb, I think you're going there soon, Jason, in Tennessee, Nashville specifically. And he's running it as an Airbnb today. He can sell it, and that space can operate as an Airbnb for one more owner. So if that owner buys the condo from him to use it as an Airbnb, they have to know they won't be able to sell it as an Airbnb. So the next buyer will not have the opportunity to generate the same kind of income. So transferability can present or at least contribute to value. I've cleaned these up a little bit. or maybe I should say I haven't included all of the remarks that we get, but we do get a variety of remarks from our lender partners, from consumers who send us private messages and or real estate agents about the appraiser. They want a new appraiser. This person is awful. The value's not correct. They're not familiar with the area. The comps are terrible. All of these things we hear. Again, I don't know that any of these are constructive, and we certainly don't want to share these with the appraiser and give them the wrong impression. Really, it is an expression of your frustration. I always say a couple of things. Number one, be careful what you say. I had a client indicate, Jason, to me that I wasn't familiar with the area. That's why I could not support the purchase price. And I asked my loan originator who was involved, I said, did the seller, because the seller and buyer were there and both of their agents, said, did they indicate that there was anything strange about my visit? And they said, no, but what would have been strange? I said, well, they asked why I didn't park in front of the house and why I walked from a block away. And I said, because you see where that car is? That is my car. It's in my driveway. So I literally was there. And to make matters, or at least create additional challenges, Jason and I served as the HOA president for 7 years, and I served on the planning committee for that region in Phoenix for 5. So I had more knowledge about that subdivision and what was happening around it than most did. So I was quite familiar with the area. What they looked at was my address for my office was about 6 miles away. And so they just assumed that I wasn't from there. So I'm going to show you some constructive things to actually share with the appraiser or share with your partner, like class valuation. But I'm going to start with what I like to call real information. This isn't me saying it. It's not class valuation. We are sharing with you Appraiser Independence. This is U.S. code. And the Appraiser Independence requirements were drafted originally by the GSEs, but really, it is intended to tell you the things you shouldn't be doing. You can't coerce an appraiser, threaten an appraiser, withhold payment from an appraiser, and do all of those things. And even some states, like in Arizona, they have laws in place. So, for example, it's a class 6 felony if you try to influence an appraiser. Now, I don't know anybody that's ever been arrested for this kind of stuff, but those laws are in place. So this is what you can't do, but what can you do, right? So you can certainly ask for corrections to an appraisal report. That is certainly one direction I would go. In fact, I encourage folks to look through the appraisal report and look for corrections first. It's possible when I visited the property that Jason started talking to me and he's super engaging, and I get out of my routine and I walk right past the half bath that's on the lower level, and I don't include that in the appraisal report. Well, if you indicate to me that you missed a half bath, John, well, I have to look at that and make my correction. It's, you now have my attention as an appraiser that I missed something. So could I have missed something else? Certainly plausible, right? You could provide further detail, asking the appraiser to explain something. And maybe that's all you need as you engage with the consumer, right? You just want to be able to better explain it, and the appraiser needs to do that and stop using appraiser speak and really put it in plain English, right? The other is to consider additional information, which Jason, I think you pointed out, and I'm going to get into an example here of sales, alternative sales. If you're a listing agent or a buyer's agent who agreed on a price, you have sales that you use to determine what that price would be. And so sharing that with the appraiser, you can do that, by the way, up front. Many appraisers think that you can't talk to them and share this information, or that's an attempt to influence value. It is not. You are simply sharing data with the appraiser that you use to price the property, and you can do that. And you'll notice there's a list, Jason, at the top of who can do this. That list is quite large. A lender, a broker, a banker, a real estate broker, an AMC, an employee of an AMC, a consumer, or any other person or entity with an interest in the transaction. So it's not just the lender that can ask these. If you are an agent on this call, I would encourage you to reach out to your lender partner so they send it to an AMC so they can forward it to the appraiser. If you reach out to the appraiser directly, or the lender reaches out to the appraiser directly, there's a disconnect. it causes all kinds of challenges for anybody involved in the transaction. You're muted, Jason. There you go.
Okay, so John, let's pause right there for 1 second, because I want to just make one thing pretty clear at the order of procedure. So mortgage brokers, which is what I am, we have to use. Let's back up a second. When Congress stepped in 2008, 9, 10, and they started rewriting some of the lending laws, one of the things that they put in place is that they limited the interaction between loan officer and appraiser. That gave rise to the AMCs. AMC is the Appraisal Management Company. So this is what happens in a transaction with a broker, and it's also really the same at a lender as well, because even if you work at Chase or Bank of America or some credit union, the loan officer, certainly the underwriter, can have very little, if any at all, interaction directly with the appraiser. So what happens is we order from the AMC, the Appraisal Management Company. They farm out the order to a random group of appraisers in that area, right? It's a round robin system. I don't even know who's doing the appraisal until it's in my hands. So after it's in my hands, and John spoke of this just now, after it's in my hands, yes, I see exactly who did it. That I'm still not supposed to call the appraiser, right? I'm still not supposed to have direct interaction with the appraiser. Now, as time has gone on, it's loosened a little. Some appraisers will talk to me. However, when I call an appraiser, number one, it's for clarification only. The very first thing out of my mouth is, I'm not calling about value. I'm not calling about value. 99% of the time, that the guards will go down. He's willing to have a conversation. But at that point, it is strictly for clarification only. Hey, Mr. Appraiser, you want me to, it's an FHA appraisal, you want me to fix X, Y, and Z. I talked to the listing agent, the buyer, we're not seeing that. Can you just point out where that is? Clarification only. I cannot say at that time, hey, you're using comp X, Y, and Z. Why aren't you using comp A, B, and C? I cannot do that. That interaction must go through the AMC, the Appraisal Management Company, not directly to the appraiser. Now, what John is saying, and on this slide and the slide before, if you have valuable information, right? You're the listing agent, you did your homework, and you got to the listing price of 300,000, or you're the buyer's agent, you want to submit an offer, you've done your homework in the area. Okay, 300 seems about right. Let's go for it. What John just said, you did homework to get to that number, right? The appropriate time to communicate that information with the appraiser, or to give a list of repairs that you've done, or upgrades that you've done, or the roof is only 2 years old. The appropriate time to do that is when the appraiser is there doing the inspection, right? Either number one, meet the appraiser there, say, here's your packet of information. Just want you to have a little bit more ammunition so you can, get to the supporting value, or two, leave it on the counter with a nice, pretty bow on it. Hey, Mr. Appraiser, look over here, right? That's the appropriate time. But after the appraisal is done, it can never be that the agent calls the appraiser to, bitch up a storm, or the loan officer call the appraiser to say, hey, why aren't you doing X, Y, and Z? That has to go through the Appraisal Management Company. So I wanted to just connect those dots, so the callers know what's going on.
Great,
back to
great.
you, sir.
That's great, Jason. And yeah, I mean, listen, occasionally those conversations happen. We get an appraiser, for example, we're not aware of it. Just to really address your point there, Jason, and we'll get the appraiser that calls and says, hey, you need to open up the order in your platform because I need to deliver a revised appraisal report. Wait a minute, why are you delivering a revised appraisal report? Then it comes out, well, I was with Jason this weekend golfing, and he said, right, now all of a sudden we don't know what conversation took place. We don't know if there was an exchange. We don't know why the appraiser is somehow compelled to revise a report all on their own. If Jason, to your point, you sent the information to us, said we'd like the appraiser to look at this, we send it. Now it's open in our portal, and the appraiser then can respond respectively, right? So great point. What are the reasons for a perceived low appraisal? Well, some of them can be clerical errors. I'm working in reverse direction. Some of them are the appraiser missed the improvements that impact value. Maybe they weren't aware of some improvements that you made. The property was purchased 5 years ago. Since then, you've remodeled the kitchen. That's not how the kitchen came when you purchased the house 5 years ago. The other is inadequate comparable sales, something that doesn't look right. I'll give you one quick example for me. I had an ROV sent to me. I keep an open mind when I see these things, but I had an ROV sent to me and I'm like, why would I use this property? It's in a PUD. All of my comps are very similar to the subject property. They're all within the same neighborhood. Why would I go 5 miles away for this other property that the agent's asking me to use? And I set it aside because I like to do these things. I give myself 30 minutes, take a deep breath. I know that everybody else is interested in this transaction, right? They are partial, subjective, independent. And so I come back and I read it again and I start looking at it. And Jason, it's a model match to the subject. It's the same size. I look at the picture. It looks like the subject property. And I look at the address again and I decide to Google map it. It is 1 block over behind the subject property. So I go to the MLS and again, it's mapped 5 miles away. I call the agent involved and the agent says, I farmed the neighborhood in which I mapped it to, and I like using that neighborhood because it gets a lot of attention. And then when people call and ask about this property, I just tell them it's somewhere close and they never care. Well, the result is I didn't find it in my search because it was located nowhere near the subject property. So there's an example of a comp that really was valuable, but let's look at some things, and I like these two screens. This is my old house in Phoenix. It is a suburban tract home. For those of you, especially if you're a lender and you're trying to make a lending decision on the collateral, right? If you estimated this home at $375,000, but the value, again, just based on these different sources, Zestimate, Redfin, Trulia, Realtor.com, it's 345 is the low. That's almost a 9% variance. That's a large spread, and depending on which direction you were, if you estimated 345, you're going to be pretty short if the value comes in at 375 and vice versa, right? And again, this is a tract home where we have a lot of data and information about the property. How about my dad's house in rural Kentucky? From this picture in the listing, there's a almost 32% variance in the value depending on the system that you're looking at. AVM's included in all of this, right? But here's the trick here. Nobody knows there's a second level to this house. There's gable ends on the back, 2 bedrooms, 1 bath. There's a full walkout basement and it's completely finished. Now it's below grade, but it's completely finished. None of that is captured here. But really what isn't captured in any of these is the 4-car detached garage with a workshop and a 1,000 square foot ADU above it. So not only is 296 or 391 off, but they're all off because they don't capture the other things that are contributing to value. And that, again, is that permitted garage, ADU, and workshop, right? So expectations and solutions. I consider this like IKEA. I buy some furniture from IKEA, right? It's a little bit chaotic. I don't read directions though, so it is what it is. But nonetheless, just if nothing better, just be prepared for the whole process. Be prepared to provide the appraiser the appropriate information and take a deep breath. We can all work through it. I promise you, there's no appraiser that is walking up to a property, a purchase. They don't know the estimated value for a refinance, by the way. That's not allowed to be shared with an appraiser. But for a purchase, nobody's walking into this saying, gee, I'd love to kill this deal. Quite the contrary. They don't want to be that person. I do get this a lot. Cost. Listen, the homeowners made this improvement. My favorite one is adult 55 plus community that I am very familiar with. There happened to be one house out of like 1,000. I don't know why, but the buyers had Formica countertops installed. Nobody else had anything other than granite, right? And so the agent said, listen, I'm having trouble. Can you help me with this? We can't even get a potential buyer to visit the property. They see the pictures, they call, we tell them it's Formica countertops. They don't even come visit. It's been on the market for almost 3 months. We've had not one visitor. Well, all of those properties were selling in 3 to 6 days. Like that's their days on market, right? So the agent finally convinced the borrower to install granite countertops. They got 3 visits, 2 offers, sold the house in 3 days, right? Time is money. The consumer, the seller, thought they would recoup the $9,000 they put into the granite countertops. They did not. It was an expectation from the market that those granite countertops were in place. And this is a lawsuit, Kinter versus United States. And here they talk about the fact that cost is not synonymous with market value. So just keep that in mind. Sometimes market value is much, much greater. You do a kitchen remodel for, let's say, $20,000, and that market recognizes it as 40. In other cases, 20 doesn't represent 20 at all. It might only contribute 10. So I want to walk through this. This is a great example. This is my house here in the Phoenix market. It's a 2165 square foot, 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. And I actually have a model match, 4 bedrooms. I have a den. They use this as a bedroom for comp number 1. If you're looking at the sales that are being used, look at 2 things. Number 1, you have a unadjusted sales price. That's these numbers at the top, 480, 475, 565, and 505. And then consider the adjustments. I think this is the disconnect for most. They're not considering the adjustments that would apply, whether that's market conditions or concessions, or it's differences in square footage, room count, etc. At the end of the day, the adjustments for all of these properties, while they're disparate values, really narrowed quite nicely, 522, 523, 522, and 525. Our range of value is somewhere in there. And if we're in an increasing market, I'm probably going to lean on the higher of those values, right? But I do have a model match at 480, and I have to consider that. Well, time is the difference, right? What we will sometimes see is, well, I don't understand, comp number 3 sold for 565. Why isn't the value at 565? Again, because there's adjustments. And if we look at the location map for this, they all look approximate. They're all within a mile, right? So for most underwriters and readers of the report, this makes a lot of sense. And of course, one of them is an active listing, right? What we will see is an ROV that looks something like this. The comps are 624, 634, and 685. And again, all proximate, we can see that they are all within a mile. Well, comp number 3 is 1.04 miles, but certainly there. Nobody considered the size differences, the location, etc. And so if we do, again, adjust for those market differences, again, Jason and team recognize where those adjusted sale prices are, 522, 527, and 525. Well, what's the difference? If the appraiser did their job, we know that there's a dotted line there. There is a market difference. If we ran a CMA, for example, on these 2 geographic areas, again, similar markets, it's one master plan community, but they're different builders, different quality of construction, etc. North of this dotted line, the median size of the home is 2,000 square feet. The median sale price is 430, and the price per square foot, even though that's not a tool that appraisers use, but it is a tool that agents use to price a property, is $203 per square foot. South of that dotted line, we're 700 square feet larger, $150,000 on average, median sale price higher, and $218 a square foot. So you can see there's a difference here in the market reaction. And so that really is a great illustration, if the appraiser recognized the market conditions. So when considering alternative sales, there are some do's and don'ts. Do look at the big picture, provide sales that have similar features and amenities. Focus on the median sales and use some logic behind it. Don't use search or price as a search criteria. Appraisers should not be using price either. So again, if the value's at 525, Jason, for example, and all of the sales that you send in a CMA are 650 and above, we already know there's sales that are below that, right? Now, is the subject property 525 or 685, right? That's the difference. But showing the market is better. Don't take the kitchen sink approach. What I mean by that is we see CMAs of 20, 25 sales. You're just sending everything you can and seeing what sticks. It doesn't get a lot of attention from appraisers. And again, don't ignore market trends. And so for appraisers, listen, they want to know that you've taken the same time and effort, and you probably have, but in sending sales over. One of the things we see a lot of is sending the sale over, that one at 565. It was already included in the report. It just was adjusted for, right? Review the appraiser's narrative, send sales in similar condition. Don't sweat small stuff, whether there's a porch light or a mailbox and things like that. Select sales wisely, and then be polite and professional. Finally, before we get into some Q&A and talk a little bit about the digital appraisal process, which we spearhead, here's a book. You can get it on Amazon. It's Inside the New Appraisal Process. I'm a co-author of it. What I love about it is there's some scenarios, and I would share with you just a couple of things about it. You are charged with being an expert, whether you're an agent or loan originator, as far as the consumer is concerned in your profession, right? So the objective for the consumer is to get a loan, as I mentioned, on either buy that dream house they want or to refinance their loan to save a little bit of money, to do something extra for the holidays or whatever, right? What they didn't want was a fight. And so in the book, we give, for example, two scenarios. Appraisal comes back, and Jason, you mentioned it, maybe it's a little lower than you were expecting, right? One conversation is, I reach out to you and I say, Jason, you're not going to believe this. This is John. I'm your loan officer. I just got your appraisal back, and it's unbelievable. The value is much, much lower than we expected. I don't know what to do, but I can tell you this. We're going to get that appraiser to change their mind. I'm going to send a nasty gram to the appraiser, and we'll get this fixed. Don't you worry about it, right? I just invited you to a fight. If I take 30 minutes, take a deep breath, I like to today I create Post-it notes to myself, right? I feel a lot better about it. I used to email myself. Turns out John is a popular name. And when another John asked me what the heck I was ranting about, I stopped doing that. But an alternative is, and the conversation can be very different. Jason, if I called you and I said, hey, this is John, I'm your loan originator. Listen, I got the appraisal back. The value is not exactly where we thought it would be, but listen, I found another loan program. I'm still going to be able to get you into it. We're going to close on time. It's only going to, we're not going to get the same payment, but it's not going to be significantly more. Really, at the end of the day, it's going to be about $1 more a day, right? That's a very different conversation. In the meantime, though, look through the appraisal report. If you see anything that's wrong with the property, maybe the appraiser missed something, or if the agents are involved and the agents have some properties they'd like the appraiser to consider, let's go ahead and exercise the reconsideration of value, which is available to us, right? And then we'll see if there's a change there. But in the meantime, I got you covered. Completely different conversation. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a minute. I want to answer any questions, and then I'm going to try to pull up another deck, Jason.
Okay. So I want to dive into a couple of common questions that I get on my side, right? And I'm going to take a guess that this is a standpoint from many loan officers across the country, right? I sit behind a desk all day. I've never been in the house. I didn't negotiate the sales price. I didn't set the listing price. All I did was, collect the information, take a check from the borrower, submit it to the AMC, hit enter. That, I don't care if the house is 2,000 square feet, 3,000 square feet. I don't know about value. Okay, so let's talk about a couple pain points that I hear all the time. How far out is an appraiser allowed to go, not only in geographic measure, but also time?
So that's a really great question. So depends on whether it's conventional or FHA, obviously, right? And so there is actually no limitation on distance or time. That is for the lack of a better term or adjective, it's an old wives' tale. It's really born out of underwriting, right? So the appraiser can go back further in time. In fact, if you read the selling guide for Fannie and Freddie, they indicate there that the dated sale may be the best indicator of value if market conditions can be captured. In other words, Jason, if there's a model match in my subdivision across the street from my house, but it sold a year and a half ago, I have no other adjustments to make except for the market conditions over that year and a half, and I can measure that. That's my best indicator of value, right? Now, I'm going to need to use more relevant and recent sales as well for the reader to understand. No underwriter wants an appraisal full of 12-month, to 2-year-old sales, right? But I have used, depending on the assignment, I've used sales that are well over a year old. FHA has a different requirement. So they require at least 3 sales. Now they say comparables, as many comparables as possible to support your opinion value. They require at least 3 sales. They don't call them comparables within the last 12 months. So that doesn't mean the appraiser uses 3 and then calls it a day. It just means they need 3 sales. So I've got an appraiser working on assignment yesterday. He's got to come up with 1 more sale to include. He's going to do that. It's not relevant. It's used only to meet the requirements, and it's going to go in comp number 4 position, right? But one interesting thing is, in 2015, when the handbook 4000.1 came out, this is where FHA is aligned with Fannie and Freddie in that regard, is they used to have a requirement. If you used a sale that was 12 months or older, right, Jason, you had to include that sale in positions 4, 5, 6, or later. They removed that requirement for one reason. Their legal team said, you believe the best comp is comp number 1, right? And that's an unwritten rule by FHA. They believe the best comp is comp number 1. It's not a requirement for appraisers, it's just what they believe. Well, if you believe the best comp is number 1 and the dated sale is the best comp, why are you telling the appraiser they have to put it in position 4? So they removed that entirely. So once again, they recognize that the dated sale may be. Proximity. I showed you my subdivision. It's very narrow, right? It's thin and long. So they could be much further. Fannie Mae actually did a study on, and they use UCDP to capture this. If all of the comps are 5, 6 miles away, that certainly is right. And then all of the alternative sales presented in collateral underwriter are 5 to 6 miles away. That's probably appropriate. It's when they're within a mile. They have they have an example, Jason, where they show an appraiser used all proximate sales. They were all within a half a mile. Ironically, they were all clustered in one subdivision. And like the example I just showed you, they ignored all of the comparables and model matches to the subject in their own subdivision. And there was a $40,000 gap between the two. Well, why did they do it? The appraiser was using it to support the contract price, right? So Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac can recognize those things. Here's what I say. Distance also doesn't matter. The example I gave you of the adult 55 plus community that I do a ton of appraisals there personally. The competing subdivision for that neighborhood is 7 miles away. So if there was an absence of comparables, I would go there and I would reference that I consulted with the market participants, the sales agents that farm that market. When no sales are available in the subject's community, this is a 55 plus with all of these amenities, the buyers, the typical buyers, are willing to go to this other community to get the same thing. The mistake that some appraisers make and underwriters is, no, you can't do that. Stay within a mile and stay within 12 months. The appraiser then goes across the street to a non-55 plus community that has different amenities and doesn't generate the same pricing.
Okay. So I'm going to ask you a question. So a data point that I heard that it makes sense, and I think that some agents and loan officers miss this point, is that anything that when we're trying to send in a rebuttal for an appraisal, what often gets missed is anything that happened after the date of the appraisal, it doesn't matter. So if we have an appraisal that's dated 6/25, if there's a sale 6/26 to 6/27 for way greater, and maybe it's a better match, it's a better price, better market conditions, it didn't exist. It didn't happen, right? Our data is 6/25 and before, right?
Yep.
Right. And I think that gets missed sometimes when we're, trying to rebut the value.
The effective date is what's important, right? So the effective date is basically that marker. And we use the effective date for a variety of different reasons. For the GSEs and FHA, it represents the date of inspection and the date of your value, right? But for example, if you were doing a retrospective appraisal, maybe it was a divorce appraisal, right? Your effective date is whatever date they ask. Now I think the most I've done on one property for a divorce was 7 appraisals. They wanted one when one of the owners bought it, when they got married, when they started having problems, when they sold, right? All of these different dates. When you're an appraiser, you actually have to go back and look at the data and ignore everything you know today, right? I know the market collapsed, right? Or I know the market's increasing today. My data has to stop at the date they asked me to, which is the effective date. There is a question on here, Jason, from Parker, about how do you determine adjustments based on different areas. Completely upgraded kitchen in Ferndale for the same adjustment as an updated kitchen in Royal Oak. I would be funny and say, well, Ferndale generates more market value because my uncle is the former fire chief there, but that wouldn't be fair, right? So what I would say is this: there's 27 different ways for an appraiser to extract and support an adjustment. And I'll give you just one. A CMA would be one way to do it. Now you have to verify the numbers if it's reasonable. And so, for example, let's just use bedroom count. I don't have any 2 bedrooms in my area, or maybe I do, but I'm trying to figure out what the adjustment between 2 and 3 bedroom is. I can search one area and use 2 bedroom as my number of bedrooms. That I'm going to restrict it to 2 bedrooms, right? And I keep it within this some kind of square footage, but certainly the same area. Run a CMA. I have a median sale price. Let's call it $100,000. I do the same CMA and I change it to 3 bedrooms instead of 2. And my median sale price is $120,000. It's one way to suggest that the bedroom adjusts for $20,000 from 2 to 3, right? I have support for that. That's one way to do it. It's an oversimplified way to do it, but it's one way to do it. If I ran that same CMA and the difference was $100,000, so they're 200,000 versus 100, I might think that there's something else influencing that value difference, and that's probably not my bedroom adjustment. And I'd have to go to another method to do that.
Talk to us about basements, and can we include the square footage in the basement? Can we include the bathroom in the basement, the bedroom? Talk to us about basements and why there's some confusion there.
I love it. So I've been measuring for ANSI my entire career, Jason. And so ANSI doesn't refer to basements, for example. And ANSI is the most recognized residential measurement standard. It's been in existence since 1996. The NAR, if you're a real estate agent, the NAR was one of 26 agencies that helped form and write ANSI, right? So I've been following it that way. They make the distinction between above and below grade. And because I'm originally from Michigan, I'll give you an example here in just a minute. But when you say basement, that garners a lot of different reactions from different people. So in Michigan, we know those can range from Michigan basements, which are nothing more than a hole in the the ground with dirt floors and rock walls, right? Take a date down there and they'll get scared, right? But they can also become or represent fully finished. My mom lived in Wixom and she had a 10-foot high ceilings, which meant she had a lot of room for mechanical systems and lighting to make this look very, finished. And it looked just like the above grade space. Just because you separate above and below grade on an appraisal in the sales grid does not mean that it doesn't contribute the same value or that you don't have value. If the space is below grade, it belongs on the below grade line. I get it. The appraisal form today says basement. The new forms, which are estimated to come out sometime in the next 5 years, so it's not soon, but it's not that far away, are going to refer to it as below grade. So they're removing the term basement, which again is part of this conversation. So if it's below grade and there's rooms below grade, including a bathroom, that should be included on that level. Now, in December, Fannie Mae, not Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae introduced and said appraisers must adhere to ANSI. That means they have to follow the standard. They have no choice. Now, that impacts Freddie Mac. They don't have to say anything because you're not going to know if you're sending it to Fannie or Freddie. So you just want it to follow ANSI standards, right, Jason? So the appraiser is going to have to do that. That was effective April 1st, and that was not an April Fool's joke either. So appraisers have been following that standard for conventional loans since April 1. It just means I have to separate it out. So my uncle owned a house or still does. I think it's called Barrett Lake in Lapeer County, right? When you drive down the road, you pull in from the road level into his garage. His garage is above grade. He has a utility room and a half bath when you walk in there. That's it. You go down the stairs and he has his entire living area, which is a walkout to the lake. He's on the lake. So his kitchen, his living room, his bedrooms, his bathroom, they're all down there. He technically has a half bath and a utility room, which is finished, heated, and cooled, that are above grade. So he has approximately 120 square feet above grade. The rest of his house is below grade. Now, if I'm comparing it, I'm going to try to find other houses that are similar, but I'm going to compare it to houses that share the same utility, the same 1,800 square feet, the same 3 bedrooms and 2.5 baths. That's what I want to do. And so again, basements have different, generate different thoughts in our heads. In Arizona, for example, when I moved here, Jason, there's not a basement here that's not finished to the nines. And in fact, they may contribute more value. They're so uncommon. When East Coasters or Midwesterners move to Arizona and they want that basement, which by the way, is more comfortable in the summer.
I was just going to say, because because it's cooler down there.
Yeah. So, and because they are finished like the above grade, again, I hear this a lot. Hey, the house is, the appraiser only called it 1,200 square feet. It's really 2,400 square feet. And it's not 2 bedrooms and 1 bath. It's 4 bedrooms and 2 baths. Well, the appraiser's got it covered in the below grade space as 1,200, 2 beds, 1 bath. And by the way, they gave it value. Now you may see some funky things because of ANSI. If I'm comparing that same house to all 2,400 square foot, 4 bedroom, 2 baths, and I don't know how much of it is below grade, you'll see across the line adjustments for those differences. But I will comment in the report, I am comparing this house to other homes that are 2,400 square feet, 4 bedrooms, 2 baths. Make sense?
Yeah, definitely makes sense. Thank you for that. What is your opinion? I've heard some chatter about this, but if the appraiser is the only, let's say, non-interested party, right? So yep. Agents and loan officers listening in, so one of the reasons that the appraisal is paid up, the appraiser is paid up front, is because they're supposed to. They don't care if it closes, if it doesn't close, if it says, like, that's not their job. Their job is to determine fair market value, right? That's it. Unbiased fair market value. That's where they start and stop, right? when Congress came in and rewrote some of the laws that I spoke about earlier, what was happening was if the invoice for the appraisal was pushed to closing, well, then the appraiser has a vested interest in it closing, right? So if they see that it's a $200,000 purchase price and they appraise it at 175,000 and they're not getting paid until closing, well, there's a chance that they're not getting paid because there's a chance it's not closing. So the appraisers paid up front because they don't, I say this in jest, but they don't care. Like they're not there to see the loan through, the transaction through, whether it closes or not. So, John, all that said, doesn't it make sense to not provide the purchase agreement to the appraiser if they're supposed to have an unbiased, like if you're giving us fair market value, what difference does the purchase agreement make? You don't have a purchase agreement on a refinance transaction. I can't tell you on a refi that, hey, our loan amount's 500,000, get us to 550 or 6 to keep the LTV down. So why do we have to do that on a purchase?
Yeah, that another great question, Jason. So I would tell you that on forums, in social media and through email forums for appraisers, appraisers often make that same argument. Why do I have to look at the contract, right? I don't want the contract. Fannie and Freddie have done studies through UCDP to show what we call confirmation bias or anchoring, which is a form of confirmation bias, that where appraisers in purchase are much, much closer to the purchase price than they are in a refinance where the spread is much larger. Well, there could be a lot of reasons for that. What I would tell you is this: there's a reason why you need to provide it. The first is the GSEs require it, right? And so if the appraiser puts in the report in the contract section that they did not analyze the contract and purchase is checked, it will fail in UCDP, or the lender will then have to stop and say, wait a minute, somebody's got to give the appraiser the sales contract. There's an argument for having the sales contract. I shouldn't be using it as a target value, right? But I can better understand the behavior of the buyers and sellers. And in it, I can see what other considerations were being provided. Oh, wait a minute, this house is selling for a lot more than all other houses in the neighborhood, but it makes sense to me they're including a boat with this property, which is personal property. I would remove that from and then continue down the path. I will tell you the GSEs and the government has done it as part of a safeguard. And it's one of the reasons why, for example, when you see an appraisal written by somebody like me, I indicate I am in receipt of and analyze a purchase contract of 24 pages, right? Well, if the lender says, wait a minute, the agents provided me one that was only 22 pages, or the agents provided me one that was 28 pages, either we're missing something or the appraiser's missing something. And so it's one of those safeguard kinds of things, Jason. And until the GSEs say that the appraiser doesn't have to do it, the appraiser has to do it. And it's also part of USPAP. So if it is purchase contract, USPAP is our standards for appraisers. And one of them is to analyze any contract for sale.
Got it. So I want to talk about this is a sore subject. It's probably going to kill me off record, but or postscript, but we're going to talk about it because recently, over the last, let's say, year or two or a couple years, right, there's been some cases against appraisers for discrimination, right? So I know that the highlights of the lawsuits. I don't know I'm not an attorney. I don't play one on TV, but some of the bullet points that I know from some of the lawsuits that have taken place was the pictures, and it came about with the pictures in the home, right, of the family. So John and Sally, they want to sell their house and they have a purchase price of 400,000. Appraiser comes in, and or maybe it's a refi, doesn't matter. Appraiser comes in and totally destroys the appraisal, right? Gives it half the value of what it should be, right? Homeowner looks at it and says, hey, what's going on here? And they start digging in. They figure out. They jump to that because the appraiser figured out that they were, Hispanic, African American, or whatever it is, that's the reason that they got the value. So they did an experiment, right? And they same exact house. They, within let's say a 30-day period, they changed all of the pictures of the couple internally. They make it a white, affluent, white picket fence type individual, right? They send out a completely separate appraiser to appraise a property, and now it's whatever the number is, $200,000 above what the previous appraisal was. So talk to us about some of those lawsuits and what's been happening on that front. And again, I'm so sorry, you can absolutely kill me after the fact, but we're here, we're talking about it. Let's just dive into it.
So here's what I can tell you. Number one, these are real life experiences, and they're referred to whitewashing a home, right? We've seen this and they are more prevalent today in media outlets than they've ever been. HUD has reported, I can't remember the number, but let's say somewhere around 20 discrimination cases as it relates to appraisals over the last 20 years, and yet they have 50 or 100 today, right? And so it's gained a lot of attention, and these are real life experiences, and we should respect that for the people involved in those transactions for sure. And I think that between the administration and all of the stakeholders within the appraisal and mortgage financial transaction realm are looking at ways to solve this. And one of them is through diversification of the appraisal profession. There's numbers out there that no matter which group you want to take the numbers from, it's still disparate. Disparate meaning it's mostly white older men, right? We need more women and more people of color participating that look like the consumers. And so that's really important. The second thing is our digital appraisal process, which is technology that allows us to scan the home. It removes the appraiser from that. Number one, they have to be more objective about the property condition because we can all see it, right? And that includes the consumer even. But then there's no interaction with the consumer. So whether it's confirmation anchoring, right? I don't have a consumer walking around the house telling me they really need this amount to make the mortgage work, right? But I also don't see the consumer. So I don't know what color they are or what religion they are or anything else about them, right? I just see the property. And so that technology can help mitigate bias, not just confirmation bias, but all forms of bias. But I do think everybody is looking at solutions, whether it's technology driven, diversifying the profession, and making sure that the small number of folks that may be behaving badly, it's removed from this equation, right? What I will tell you is none of these have been decided yet, right? There's been no decisions in the courts. I know one of them is in the courts only. They decided to skip HUD altogether. The others are with HUD, and they're working through those. And I suspect they're going to take a bit of time. There's a lot of research and efforts that have to go into those to verify that, in fact, there was discrimination taking place. What we don't know is we only know what's been reported to us. We don't have all the context. We don't know the timeframes. We don't know what else was involved, if there were changes to the property and so on. None of that is really important at this point. That'll all be flushed out with all of these complaints. What is important is that people feel that they're being treated unfairly, and that should be explored and mitigated at whatever we have to do that.
Got it. Okay, so let's work on wrapping up. I've been here, for about 60 minutes. I want to talk about, I was on because I'm on the advisory board, I was part of a discussion, 30 or 60 days ago. Absolutely blew my mind because I thought like these changes were coming tomorrow. Like I thought the entire appraisal process was being revamped like tomorrow. So I get it. It's a little bit away and they're doing some beta testing on it now. I want to talk about where the appraisal process is going. And let's talk about the call that I was on about the digital process.
Sure. So I'll try to make this brief. So forgive me, I'm going to probably go through a couple of slides where we're not going to spend a lot of time, but we call it digitizing the appraisal process, Jason, and that is leveraging our property fingerprint, our 3D property scanning and data collection in the process. And so there's a couple of reasons for that. One is it provides comprehensive data collection, and it is fungible across all appraisal or valuation types. So 1004s, whether it's for a lender specific to the GSE, whether it's Fannie or Freddie. It also is fungible across, for example, listing appraisal or something like that. We call it source of truth data collection. And if we're looking at it today, you're familiar with the term desktop. FHFA announced in October that the GSEs will adopt desktop appraisals into their policy. They did that in March. That is for purchase transactions with LTVs of 90% or greater. When you submit a loan application, you may get a result that says it's eligible for waiver. That doesn't need anything else. But what if you get which is coming up here for Freddie Mac in July, waiver plus a PFR, right? Well, Property Fingerprint Report can work with the waiver in that regard and allow the lender to complete the collateral risk assessment for valuation. If it's for desktop, we can leverage Property Fingerprint Report, deliver that payload, that data to the appraiser for their analysis, which is really where their highest and best use is, to use an appraiser term. There is hybrid, which is also in place. That is in a test and learn environment today. Hybrid means property data collection. We use that for hybrid. And then, of course, you have the traditional 1004 URAR. I'm going to go past the benefits of and just show you how this actually works. For class valuation, there is an order that's delivered to us, right? You ask for a desktop. We send one order to a trained pro scanner. They're background checked and they receive training on the technology and also customer service. Then we also send an order to an appraiser to complete the desktop. The pro scanner scans the property, so they're physically there, and then they upload that scan for the appraiser's consideration and analysis, right? There are questions and concerns for appraisers about trusting data. Part of that is because there's different solutions, Jason. Some of them offer a floor plan and 2D flat images. We offer a digital twin of the property. It's a 3D tour of the interior and exterior. And the technology is so advanced, Jason, we can measure a house with the technology. So the person who's scanning the property doesn't have to know how to measure the house. And here's an example of one. All of the exterior dimensions, the room labeling, interior dimensions, the interior walls, doors, countertops, fixtures, all of that is captured using technology. And the differences are somewhere between 3 and 20 square feet for every house I measure. I just measured a 3,000 square foot house. It was 3,020 based on my measurements. Our technology measured at 3,000. The house I live in here in Peoria, it's 2164 and a half based on my measurements. The technology had it at 2165, half a square foot different.
Right. So to me, that's just that's amazing. I mean, you're basically, excuse me, you're basically taking some sort of digital scanner, you're sending it to somebody local in that area, whether it's the local appraiser, whether it's a local agent, whether it's the homeowner, whatever it is, and you're saying, hey, do this, right? And it's going to scan the GLA, the gross living area, right? It's going to give you that grid right there, and then that's the data. Like that's where the business is going. That's where the industry is going, to take the human element out of the equation, right? And it's going to have the digital footprint delivered to somebody to determine the value.
100%. And that was the technology, that we're deploying. So a Hero device using the iPhone in our Envision Capture app. That's what the pro scanners are professionals. They're probably the home imagery professionals that serve the market today. They could be appraisers or trainees, but For us, they've gone through the application process and have been vetted along with the background check. So in addition, we think there is the opportunity to mitigate a bias in appraisals because, again, it's a repeatable process. We could capture the same results each and every time. And what people do like about this is there is the opportunity, and this isn't, I mean, it's new, but it's not so new that we don't have a lot of data. This is over 15,000 orders, Jason. We're 2 days faster on average. That's across the country. In markets like Austin, Texas, where it's 20 days, 20 days to get an appraisal in Austin, right? We're sub 9. So we picked up 11 and a half days in Austin. Revisions for appraisers and for the clients, this is closing on the back end. We send back 50% less to our appraiser partners, and our lenders, the underwriters that work for you, they're sending back 85% less. So
right.
that means
and this is live. Like, this is in beta right now, and the GSEs, Fannie and Freddie, like, they're adopting to this new technology. So this is not some like, pie in the sky, like, hey, could this happen? Like, this is in the works to be the way.
Yeah, 100%. And so we look at it going back to that, how it works for us, Jason. Desktop can be very, in my opinion, for some solutions, it doesn't provide for a great consumer experience, right? There can be all kinds of delays. Does the appraiser have enough information from the MLS alone? Do you have a floor plan that meets the GSE requirements, that has all of the elements? Probably not. Builders don't include all of them. In their marketing material, they include some of the elements, right? Maybe the total square footage, maybe the room labeling, but they don't include all of the exterior dimensions, right? So what ends up happening is appraisers say, I can't do this, or they do it, and then the GSE says, wait a minute, the appraiser never should have done it. They don't have all of the information they need. We use property data collection for both desktop and hybrid because we believe it provides for a better consumer experience. We streamline the process and save time on the front end and the back end. And these people are dedicated to inspecting the property, scanning the property, let's call it. And so their availability is greater, right? If you need me to go out to a property, I have a schedule, right? I might be 2 weeks out. A Pro Scanner has availability in their calendar to go out within a day or two. And I think I have an example of what that looks like in Fresno, California. Our traditional appraisals today are 7.5 days in Fresno. Now, I call this the unicorn. It is what we strive for, though. It is where we believe it's heading. And our digital appraisal was completed in 18 hours. The scanner was available. The appraiser was waiting for the data and knew it would come that night, and then finished the appraisal up the next morning. 18 hours in Fresno. That was our fastest appraisal. I think we just had one yesterday at 17.5 hours. It was on LinkedIn. And so that's the direction that we're going for with this kind of technology. And again, allow the appraiser to perform the tasks that represent their highest and best use. And that's analyzing and valuing real property.
Right on. John, I thank you so much, man. Thank you. Anybody listening on, so I've got direct access to John, whether he likes it or not. I got his info. So, if there are any follow-up questions, please email me directly, jason@onestopfinancialgroup.com. I will make sure that these questions, get to John. We'll get you some answers. It doesn't matter what the question is, just send it over. We'll send it to John. We'll get you an answer. If any, and John, anything else?
No, I get super excited. First of all, you can see I'm a little nerdy as it relates to appraisals, but I get super excited when I have the opportunity. I appreciate you giving me that opportunity to share what I know about appraisal and where we're going. And I'm super thankful to the folks online that are interested in learning more. I think it's helpful because I believe at the end of the day, we're all partners in this, and our job is to help the consumer. And so if this does that, then I'm elated.
Yeah, sounds good, man. John, again, thank you so much. Maybe we can do this again in a couple months. And yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thanks, guys. Talk to you soon.